All right, Bulls and Bears, back with another dose. My name is JJ. You're watching Bull Boom Bear Bust. BX4 News back in the building. Folks, let's get into it. So welcome, Bulls and Bears, friends and foes, everybody. Well, if you're a foe, why would you be here? Unless you're just checking out the channel and you're like, I don't like this guy, I'm a foe. Otherwise, thanks for being here. We've got a lot of news to get caught up on as usual. It's going to be our usual weekend report. We take things a little bit slower and cover a lot of the news that I didn't get to during the week. Some of it a little outside of the box of what we normally talk about, but still within the spectrum of financial, economic, investing, and all that good stuff here, how it's affecting people, the economy. And in an economy where 90% of the stock market is owned by just the top 10%, you see these numbers out there like the deposits, the bank deposits. And the number is actually pretty high, but when you look at it, 90% of the cash also in deposits at banks is the top 10%, which goes all the way up to the multi-billionaires. But let me just bring up a couple charts here to show you how significantly the cash positions have increased and the number of deposits. And first right here, we're going to take a look at money market funds. And this is in the trillions of dollars. So just surpassed $4.6 trillion. And again, most of this, and look at this, since 2020, massive spike up there. And do you think that's the average person? Do you think that's the bottom 90%? Of course not. Because we know that close to 70% of people are living paycheck to paycheck and barely have enough to cover a $400 emergency expense or a vehicle repair, any of those things. So we know that this is mostly the top 10%, folks. And what do we see over the past several years? We saw profits explode with companies, and their excuse was, the shortages, the supply shortages, and just inflation, right? The shipping delays, all those things that came along with what happened out of 2020. And we saw that a lot of companies and businesses raised their prices more than they really had to. It was much more than just raising their prices to keep up with the higher costs of wholesale goods and raw materials. It was greedflation, folks. They used that as an excuse to bump the prices up way more than they really needed to if it was just based on the cost of raw materials going up. We know that. You should know that because we covered that many, many times over the past few years. Yeah, so most of this cash positions, money in money markets, the top 10%, folks. There's another one here. Let's see here. U.S. money market funds total. But actually going back to this other chart here, this gives us a breakdown or a difference between household funds and then total, which includes, of course, investment firms, corporations, hedge funds, etc. U.S. money market funds at households, that's the first one there, about $4.6 trillion. Remember, though, a lot of these households, most of this cash is the top 10% households. But add in everything else here, including big business, and you have close to $7.5 trillion just in money markets, right? And that doesn't even count CDs and just cash sitting in savings or checking or in other areas. All right, but moving on here, folks, and I hope everyone's doing well, by the way. It's mid-June here. I'm recording this on the 14th. By the way, today's the day where we're supposed to see massive protests across the country. Let's just check on that real quick, check in on that before we move on here. And it's actually making news across the world here. We've got the Independent out of the UK. Cities prepare for No Kings rallies. We've got the Guardian mass protests underway. Asia here. Americans hold mass protests ahead of this military parade. And has the military parade started yet? Let me see if we got any photos. And as I'm recording this, they're saying that it just started like 10 minutes ago. The parade started early to beat the rain is what they're saying here. So here's a couple photos here. This is out of the Times. So pretty interesting. All right, look like fun to you? Got some tanks there. I guess if you wanted to see some tanks, if you're a kid, it's probably cool to see. And there they go marching. All right, a couple more here. We've got, looks like they're dressed as some of the colonials here from the early times here. in the U.S. So it doesn't look like $45 million worth of stuff to me, but probably a lot of it was just transporting and hauling and all the energy that it used. And I heard the streets weren't even built for this type of heavy machinery. So how much damage is it going to do? But the country's been wasting money for decades. This is just the latest example. Even Elon Musk came out and said this spending bill, what they called the big beautiful bill, which was a big bad bill, that was too much for him, and it caused a split in between those people, between Musk and the president. So there's a lot of things happening right now that people, I think, are starting to realize that this was all a scam. We're not cutting spending. And I've explained it here 1,000 times over the years. You can't cut spending because economic growth is based on spending and consumption and borrowed money. So if you stop that, if you stop the spending and take that money out of the economy, you see, even money that's put into stuff that's wasted, like parades and stuff like that, it gets put somewhere, and that's economic activity, and that gets chalked up in the economic numbers that come out, right? So spending money, even foolishly, still leads to a good economic number, which is completely silly, but that's really how the numbers are calculated. So that's why they can't cut the spending, folks. It'll never happen. So that's why I've always said here, inflation is more likely than any sort of deflationary crash. Regardless of what the title of the channel, bull, boom, bear, bust, it's pretty much bull, boom to infinity. Even the housing market, that should have really crashed by now. But it's not, because there's so many, even right now with sales really low, it's still easy loans that people can get. Now, people are finally choosing not to get them, even though they can. And that's what's causing this dynamic shift now in the housing market, with so many more sellers versus buyers. But it's going to be a steady decline in the housing market, not a crash, in my opinion. Over the past 5 years, ever since 2020, you probably, if you've been on this channel, you know I've been pretty bullish and, not expecting any sort of crash or collapse. But let's take a look at a couple stocks here, folks, because things are changing as far as subsidies in certain industries. Now, the solar industry, the electric vehicle industry, no longer getting these tax breaks, and that's causing some big problems. Take a look at this. Just one example of many. A solar company in Montana might have to lay off most of their employees because of the change in the, this would be solar, the spending bill and energy tax credits. If it passes, more than half of the staff is going to be laid off, and that's going to be industry-wide, folks. The solar industry, it's not going to collapse, but it's going to see a massive implosion, and there's going to be a lot of jobs lost, right? So some people say it's terrible, this should never happen. Other people say we should have never propped up these industries to begin with federal money, subsidies, because it's really false economic growth, right? When the printing press just goes full bore into some industry, yes, it creates jobs, but then when the money's pulled away, when the stimulus is pulled away, then the jobs are lost. Just like the stimulus from 2020, all the stimulus checks sent out to consumers, it caused a lot of people to be able to buy things, but look what happened to prices. Now, a lot of the people that bought those things, they're back where they were, right? When you look at the savings rate, pretty much back where we were, and a lot of people getting their cars taken back. They can't pay their house payments, their mortgages are becoming due, they can't pay their property taxes, so now they're putting their homes on the market, and it took a few years, but now we're starting to see the dynamic unfold. So it's a pretty interesting time to be looking at all this stuff here. Also, no more tax breaks for electric vehicles, and look what's happened with companies like Rivian. I mean, I told people not to buy Rivian. In fact, we shorted that stock. Was it less than a year ago? We did a put option rather. And so right here, when it hit $18, that was too much of a run up from right around $10. So in just a few months, it ran up to 18. We did a put option on that. I announced that here in this channel. We did pretty good. I think I covered it down here around 13. So pretty nice gain. And pretty much then it's been up and down a little bit. We're back down around $13 right now. But look at 5 years, folks. I mean, this has been a dead investment for 5 years. I mean, if you bought the dip or maybe sold at the top of one of the spikes, could have made some money on it. But I warned people against the electric vehicle industry and investing in it years ago, because we saw that it was being propped up. It was a bunch of easy money, thrown at that particular industry. So you have to look out for stuff like that, when you're investing. But there's a lot of people out there actually surprised that prices haven't went up even more than they have. Well, there's a few different reasons why that prices haven't spiked yet. One, we had a lot of companies front loaded goods in their warehouses and supplies prior to the tariffs taking effect. So that's one thing. Also, it just takes time for these things to get over into the economy. So all this stuff has to be moved out of the warehouse. And also lack of pricing power. Companies, they know that consumers are pulling back on certain types of spending. We see a lot of closures happening right now. 2025, we're on pace to beat the previous record in 2024 for the number of retail closures. Another year, another record. So it shows us that things are just headed in this direction that's more economic pain. So it's something, can it go on forever? No, there has to be a point where things just get so bad where they have to finally say this is a recession. But the problem is they only know how to cut rates and throw easy money into the economy. So it usually just leads to more inflation. So after some sort of downturn or correction, if one is allowed to happen, it's usually more inflationary policies that come afterward. Just look at 2008, just look at 2020. And that's the thing, folks. So something has to be done to rein in all this money that can just be thrown into the economy at the click of a mouse, trillions of dollars. I mean, literally. Now I want to pull up this Q&A session that just happened recently. It's pretty interesting, if you ask me. Somebody was questioning Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, on the economic numbers. And take a listen. We'll talk about it here. And when you listen to this, tell me if you agree. I think Bessent kind of stutters here.
Positively is when the administration is in retreat from key policy areas. I want to say, given your successful past, isn't this embarrassing?
Is there a question there, sir?
There's a question. Isn't this embarrassing?
Oh, is it embarrassing? Well, I'm sorry, Congressman, but you seem not to have seen the economic data.
He's struggling, folks.
GDP growth has been quite substantial. Job growth is solid.
GDP growth is half what it was last year, sir.
The job growth is solid, and we had
job growth is a third what it was all last year, sir.
No. And private sector job growth especially. And if you'd like to talk about inflation, would you?
The inflation has been coming down. Just the inflation is good so far. We will see every economic thing I read, which is much every day, suggests the impact of the tariffs is not hit yet.
Well, why don't we look at the data rather than the hysteria, which is how I made my career.
Okay, so he he put out some talking point there. Let's look at the data, kind of a little joke to try to divert from the numbers. In fact, I don't think those numbers were actually correct, though, what the other gentleman was putting out there. But the fact that Bessent couldn't come back and cite data that disputed that, he was really unprepared for that. But we know that growth is based on mostly consumption, folks, which is based on debt and easy money policies, loose lending, helicopter money, etc. So these numbers are put out there to show economic growth. Sorry, I got a bug zapper back there. We got mosquitoes in my garage, and got this bug zapper going on here. I work in my garage, by the way, but I'm keeping the door open because it's summertime, and I've got one of these screens. They come down over the door, but it doesn't stop all the mosquitoes. They still get in. So you might hear a bug zapper going off, especially here in the next few summer months while I have all the doors open here. So what do you guys think about that exchange? Pretty interesting. Check that out. That was over at Blue Sky if you want to check that one out. All right, folks, a couple stories I wanted to jump into that I saw. Milwaukee Brewers, doesn't matter which baseball team. The fact is he's selling his home, Robert Bayer. He had to knock off $20 million, folks, off of his extravagant L.A. estate. So he plays for Milwaukee but lives in L.A. Okay. Los Angeles estate, staggering $20 million price drop, reducing his asking price now to just under $55 million. Almost 2 years after the property was first put on the market, folks. This guy's been waiting 2 years. Bayer and his wife built the extraordinary 8-bedroom, 14-bathroom dwelling from the ground up after purchasing a 3.5-acre lot, which now sits for $8.75 million. Oh, wow. Which now sits for $8.75 million back in 2000. I'll try to make it more sense here. Make it make more sense. They purchased the 3.5-acre lot, which it now sits on, for for 8.75 million. So that's what they paid just for the land. It doesn't really tell us the total cost of constructing the home, but we do know that the land was 8.75 million. So he's making a profit nonetheless. But $20 million price drop, I mean, it's pretty significant. Look at this place, folks. They're throwing a baseball. Wow. Throwing a baseball. No wonder kids, when they're young, they want to be sports stars. I wanted to be a sports star. I played in sports. I thought, even with asthma, a little kid with asthma, and I had to take asthma medicine, and not in very good shape. I thought I was going to be a professional sports star. One year it was baseball, then it was going to be football, and your odds of doing that, though, and not getting injured are very low. Of course, if you're super talented, you can do it. But are these people overpaid? Absolutely. But how are they able to make so much? Because people keep giving them money. People keep buying the jerseys, buying the memorabilia, going to the games, even watching them on TV, because advertisers, they know the number of people that are tuned in, so they make money off advertising. So I'm guilty too. I've been watching the NBA playoffs, and it's fun to watch. I wish they didn't make so much money, right? Because when they make so much money, it almost seems like they don't want to win as much. Like, you never see, like, sometimes, but you rarely see players crying unless maybe they really don't have much money and they lost and it might be their last game or something like that. But you really don't see too much crying amongst the millionaires throwing the balls around, do you? Also, something else that's kind of hanging on a thread right now. We're not sure which way it's going to go, but your bank deposits may lose FDIC protection under this new bill here, this new plan. Regulations are going to be changing. So should depositors always get money thrown at them when the bank fails? Or should they let people lose money and then people then will be skeptical, or they'll be less likely to keep their money in the banks, and that could cause big problems with the banks, right? I see both arguments. I see they should always give these people their money, otherwise people will lose confidence in the banks. Other people say we need to lose confidence in the banks because banks that are just propped up on the FDIC reimbursing people or other sorts of money given out, including bailouts, banks shouldn't even be around. And then other people would say that that's good too, because if there's not ways to borrow money in a bunch of banks and easy money, then prices would come down, because we know that easy money and borrowed money, makes prices go higher. All right, people, I want to go to one more story here. This is kind of sad to me. We've got people getting their property taken for affordable housing, and in some cases it's farms. Take a look at this.
Don't want to eat the meat in the stores because of the chemicals.
The farm is surrounded by warehouses or land that's about to become warehouses. O'Donnell hopes Cranberry finds other places to put 265 affordable housing units and fulfill its constitutionally mandated obligation.
I hope they use their minds and their hearts that this is a good thing in this community. There's a lot of people like to look at these animals. Sometimes they're parking along the side of the road. They come up in the driveway. They just want to sit here and look. They don't want to eat the meat in the store.
All right, folks, so what they're doing is they're taking people's land and property, including farms, to build more housing. On one hand, yes, we need more housing, but do we need to get rid of the farms? And this is just one example of many. Do we need to get rid of the farms in the rural areas for this housing? Pretty soon there's going to be houses everywhere, but no food unless we import everything. And then what's going to happen if we have to import everything as far as food? The tariffs are going to bite into that. And folks, not looking good on that front here. But let me know what you think about that. Should they be taking people's property for affordable housing? What they're saying, it's constitutionally mandated to have to build affordable housing, so that just takes away everybody's property rights, I guess. I mean, that's the way it sounds. And, we see that farmers are struggling right now, and that's one of the reasons why food prices are so high. For example, here in California, avocados. We can grow avocados here in California. It's the right climate for it. But a lot of the avocado farms, they went under. They weren't able to make it. And some of them couldn't even afford to water their crop. And they let a bunch of trees die. And several farms up here in San Diego County. North of me a little bit, Fallbrook, a big avocado growing area. So now most of the avocados that I see in the store here, I was just there earlier today, most of them are from Mexico. Even though we can grow them right here, most of them are still from Mexico, right? So just a kind of a small example, I think, what's happening on a broader scale, folks. We're not very well resourced here in the U.S. We're reliant on other countries for a lot of things. The tariffs, we're yet to feel the impact. But then again, we have some deflationary things happening as well with all the population shifts going on right now. And of course, that's what a lot of the protests are about right now is the policies of this new administration. So it's going to be interesting to say the least. We'll see if something pops off this weekend as far as these protests, and hopefully nothing crazy, nothing violent. But let me know what you think about any of this down in the comments. Thanks for being here. You're keeping this channel alive. I really appreciate it. To each and every one of you watching, drop me a line, drop me a hello, thumbs up, whatever you can do down in the comments. And we'll see you here next time, everybody. Keep stacking. Bye for now. Peace.